most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they could do in 2 or 3 or 5 years, right? And
Yeah.
real estate is not a get rich quick scheme. You have to invest the time. And in order to invest the time, you've got to align that as one of your higher values, that you'd rather, go out there and create abundance for yourself and your family than maybe just, succumb to a W-2 job for the rest of your life. Not that there's anything wrong with the W-2, but maybe we could create and carve out some time to work in your W-2 and start investing in real estate.
Are you looking to achieve massive success in your life without dealing with costly investment nightmares? If yes, then this is the podcast for you. Here, we provide engineers and busy professionals all the secrets and strategies to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and live a meaningful life by design. Here's your host, Ted Patel.
All right, listeners. So today in the show, you want to pay a very special attention and take notes on the valuable insights that would be shared in the next few minutes. Our special guest today is Trevor McGregor, who is also known by Coach T in these inner circles. He's a high-performance master coach who has trained many people around the world and many successful real estate investors also. He also invests in real estates, especially multifamily and commercial real estates. So welcome, Coach T. Thanks for taking time out. How are you doing today?
Well, what a great introduction, and great to be here, Ted. I'm doing phenomenal, and thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks a lot for being here. So, Coach, on this podcast, Decoding Cashflow, we not only focus on the real estate investment strategies, but also provides the holistic approach towards the life, which goes beyond the financial gains. So before we dive deep into some of the real estate or life-altering advice that you're going to provide, I'd like to hear from you about your journey on becoming a high-performance coach and a real estate investor.
Well, thank you very much. And it's a bit of a journey. I mean, I am in my early 50s, and I was born and raised in Canada, so on the prairies of Canada. And, just like most people, loved sports, loved growing up. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Went off and studied business in college. And then I went to work for a hospitality company that did retail and did restaurants and some of that stuff. And what I thought was going to be a short stay there, Ted, turned into a very long, career in my 20s and 30s. I became, the executive director of operations, and, just fell in love with, helping people, whether it was in their careers, whether it was in the HR department, whether it was in marketing, whether it was in, the finance or procurement. I had my hands in everything. And I really, really felt that helping people was the fastest way to get the business to move forward. And we grew it to a pretty good size. And, when I was in my early 30s, the owners of the company said, Trevor, we love that you're here. We want you to come in and invest with us and put some money into the expansion plan. And I thought, wow, this is my big opportunity to become rich and, put some money into things and have that money grow. And I literally took all of my savings. I cashed in my 401k, and I even convinced my own parents to take out a 6-figure second mortgage on the family home. And they really loved me and believed in me. And I dumped all that money into this, expansion plan of the hospitality company. And for the first couple of years, things went really, really good until, we got to a point where we were expanding way too fast. We were in 5 major cities in Canada, and, we really were going way too hard. And to make a real long story short, I lost all of that money. It imploded.
Wow.
It all fell apart, and I lost all of that money. So there I was, broke. I gained a bunch of weight, and I didn't know how I was going to pay back all these failed loans. And I don't know if you or the listener have ever been broke or gained a bunch of weight or had a rift in their marriage, but I was going through a heck of a lot of stuff at the time. And, what do you do when you're down and out? Well, you seek guidance. And thank God for me, I found a coach. And that coach was absolutely amazing and instrumental in saying, hey, Trevor, I'm really sorry that this has happened to you, but you're a young man, you're married, you've got kids, you got to get up, dust yourself off, and find a way to keep on keeping on. And I said, I know, but how am I going to ever pay this back? And he said one thing, Ted, to me that I'll never, ever, ever forget. He said, have you ever thought of investing in real estate? And I said, real estate? I don't know anything about real estate. And he said, you could use other people's money, go out there and buy some properties, fix them up, or rent them out, or refi them, or flip them, and start rinsing and repeating. And he believed, because he was a real estate investor at the time, that that would be the fastest way for me to go back and recoup all of my, my money. And that's exactly what I did. I went and I was in Vancouver, Canada at the time, and I bought one little townhouse, and that was a great experience. And then I leveraged the profit from that and bought a duplex, right? And then I'd buy more duplexes and fourplexes and condos and single family homes. In a relatively short amount of time, not only did I have a beautiful cash flowing real estate portfolio, but I used a lot of the profits to pay back all of my failed restaurants. I even paid my parents back in full. And that's how I got into real estate investing. Now, here's the cool part. It was around that same time that people would come to me and they'd see me buying these duplexes and fourplexes and single family homes back in the day. And they'd say, Trevor, can you show us what you're doing so we can go out there and do that? And it was my, son's soccer coach and little league baseball coach that I literally, helped them buy their first rental property. Within 6 months, they had their second, and then they went and got their third. And then people would say, how did you learn to do that? And they'd say, go see Trevor. And that's when the coaching bug bit. And I just loved helping people. And around that same time, I got an opportunity to do some work with Tony Robbins. And one of Tony's members on his team said, Trevor, you're so passionate about business. You're so passionate about people. You're so passionate about real estate. Tony's looking to hire coaches for the business division. And that's when I went to work for Tony Robbins. And that's when I absolutely fell in love with coaching people all over this beautiful planet, business owners, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, Fortune 500 executives. And to date, that's been my passion now, real estate and coaching. I've got a beautiful, portfolio back in Vancouver, and now I'm in more multifamily syndications all over the US. And to date, Ted, I think you know this, I've done over 30,000 coaching sessions, which is an actual statistic. You'll hear a little bit of raspiness in my voice, but I'll take a pause there and, throw that back to you, because that's how I got into real estate, and that's how I became a high performance coach.
Wow, what a great story, Coach. So yeah, it goes like, you were on the peak, you came down, there was a mental block, you got a coach who removed the mental block, reset your mindset, and again, you're back on the trajectory on growth. So what a journey, Coach. So how did you train yourself? Or maybe what was the thing that your coach at the initial stage provide you that helped you reset your mindset? Like what kind of guidance?
Yeah. Well, great question. And it was really that there is no failure. There's only feedback, right? And as entrepreneurs or real estate investors who are new to anything, it's not going to go perfectly or in a straight line. So he really said that the same thing is true in business, real estate, marriage, health, where we're going to have peaks. And like you said, we're going to have some valleys, right? Yeah. And those peaks, we think everything's going great. And that's usually when we take more risk and we try to do something even greater, where we find ourselves coming down the other side of the mountain in a valley. So he literally said that I've got to really condition my mindset to believe that we're going to have peaks and valleys. We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have good times and bad times. It's what I teach now, called the law of polarity, right? Just like you can't have day without night, or black without white, or masculine energy without feminine energy. Business is the same thing. So my coach was instrumental in getting me to see through a different lens, whereas before I thought everything had to be perfect and it had to line up perfectly and it was all going to work out perfectly. Well, I don't know if that ever has existed for any entrepreneur or real estate investor, but that's the first thing he did. The second thing he did was to really condition my identity, right? That I was someone who was here on purpose and with purpose to go after what I wanted, because the universe is abundant, right? And it allows anyone who's got a desire that's on their heart to go out there and pursue it. And so he really got me to really believe in that, never ending, intelligent, and inspired action. Go out there and take action, own your mindset, own your identity, and just keep on keeping on.
Yep, absolutely, coach. So that reminds me about a quote which says, you become what you think about. Earl Nightingale, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So good. Earl Nightingale was one of the godfathers of coaching. I absolutely love his work. And, obviously I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. I read a ton of books. I listen to great podcasts like this. And it's something that I think never ends, right? And quotes are something that really feed the soul. They really feed me. And I'm a quote guy, and I've got probably, I don't know, 1,000 different quotes that I've captured over the years that I'll sprinkle into my coaching or sprinkle into a stage presence or sprinkle into a podcast, because I think that they really do a great job in getting us to see, hear, and feel that, we need to do some of that self-motivation to get out there and take action rather than just, sit down and watch Netflix. What do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's move on to the next thing, right? Regarding the mindset. So what or how a person can decode his mindset, and become a successful real estate investor? What do you think?
Yeah. Decoding the mind is really, checking in with three things, because these are the three things that guide all of us. We all have certain beliefs. We all have certain values, right? And we all have certain rules. So it's something I refer to as BVR. Our beliefs, our values, and our rules are really what are guiding us. Now, check this out, Ted, because if you really think about where did you get your beliefs? Where did you, construct your values, or where did you come up with your rules? Well, a lot of that came from your parents, right? A lot of that came from your siblings. It came from your school teachers. It came from, your sports coaches or whatever you did growing up. But I'm telling you, all of that is literally based on people's model of the world from 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? That would be like using computer programs from 30, 40, 50 years ago to run one of today's supercomputers. And I think if you tried to do that, today's supercomputers wouldn't even, recognize the programming. So sometimes you got to take a look at, are you running an old belief, an old value, or an old rule that maybe you should leave with your parents or your teachers to step into a new belief, a new value, or a new rule about, who you want to be and how you want to show up in all areas of your life. Because when you and I talked before, and we recently met at the Best Ever conference with Joe Fairless, it's really all about, what do you want? Why do you want it? And who do you need to be to go after it, right? So when we start shifting our beliefs, or we see other people doing what we want to do, and we surround ourselves with them, like you and I at the conference, it's a lot easier for us to release the old beliefs, values, and rules that weren't working or are not truly ours, to adopt some new ones. And it's all about going from what I call the familiar past to the present. And then from the present, we create what Joe Dispenza calls the predictable future, because it's almost like, driving a car. Could you imagine driving a car, staring into the rear view mirror, right? About what's behind you? I mean, if we did that, we'd crash the car. You got to almost like glance into the rear view mirror to see where you've come from. But you've got a big, bright, beautiful windshield of everything that's ahead of you. And I'd rather look out the windshield than look in the rearview mirror. What would you say to that?
No, absolutely. The one thing I liked in the statement that you made is, a person needs to have a strong why. Only that can lead them to a successful investor, or whatever their goal is.
Yeah, I'll stack on that, Ted. I love that you bring that up, because it's not just about having a why. It's about having multiple whys, and all of the reasons that literally, what are you here to be, do, or have? I mean, we're not here very long, maybe 70, 80, 90, 100 years, or maybe as some of this new technology comes out in medical science, we might live till we're 120, but it's not the day you're born and the day you die. It's what you do with it in between. And if you don't have a big enough why, or multiple reasons why you want to increase your financial freedom, or maybe you want more time freedom, or maybe you want more geographical freedom, or maybe you want to impact people more, including your spouse or your family, your kids, your siblings, your parents, right? Or you don't want to give back to society. It's almost like, well, what are you doing? Because again, we always say, the people that fail to have a why are the people that fail, versus the people that lean into their why and activate their why and revisit that why regularly are the people that roll up their sleeves and go out there and achieve tremendous success in the world. What do you think of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. You're perfectly on spot. Yep. So, love it, Trevor. All the insights that you have been providing. Wow. So much to think about. My brain is going.
Yeah, I tend to do that to
Churning
people.
that.
And again, you can hear my passion for it. It's not just me speaking it, it's me teaching it and owning it and leading by example. And again, has it been easy? No. But when you do the mindset work and then you take intelligent, inspired action, I think that's the 1-2 punch that allows all of us to take things to a whole new level.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Coach T, let's talk about the 4 superpower S words. Let's talk about those words and provide some guidance to the listeners who want to become a successful real estate investors.
Absolutely, Ted. My pleasure. And again, folks, these are 4 words that all start with the letter S, as in superhero. And if you really think about them and how they apply to you today and how they could apply to you tomorrow, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how you can use this to catapult yourself forward. So what I'll do is I'll speak to what all 4 S words are, and I'll go into a quick explanation, because the very first one, Ted, as you know, is your state. And that state refers to state management. That is, how are you showing up in your mind and in your body? How are you showing up and focusing, right? Because again, we're either focused on what we don't want or we're focused on what we do want. And whatever we focus on, we move towards. So you really have to ask yourself, are you moving towards what you want? Or maybe you're moving away from what you don't want, which can both be helpful, but I like to focus on what I want rather than what I don't want. And then you have to, back that up by using intelligent, inspired language, right? If you say things like, well, I really should call brokers, or I really should create a capital raising platform, or I really should go read this, letter of intent. Words like would, should, maybe, ought to are really what we call weak forms of commitment. So you got to change your state. You got to focus. You got to be moving towards what you want, and you got to back that up with empowering language like I will, or I am, or I've got this, or today, these are my 3 to thrive. I'm going to go out there and do these 3 things. And I'm telling you, nothing changes your opportunity to zip forward than really owning your state management in your brain. What do you think of that one?
Absolutely. You're on the spot, Trevor. Yep.
Yeah. And that takes us to number 2, Ted, which is your story, right? So if number 1 is state, the second most important thing is your story. And your story, folks, is really your identity. It's who you believe you are, right? And we're either one of 2 identities. We're either a victim to circumstance and what we can't do, right? Or we choose to move beyond victim to become a victor on our way to victory, right? And it sounds something like this, because I hear this with real estate investors all the time, that, I'm a victim because all the good deals are gone, or the government has, raised interest rates, or there's so much competition out there, or, insert excuse here, insert excuse here, insert excuse here.
Yeah.
And that is what we call a victim level of thinking versus stepping out of that and into a story of a victor where, sure, there's competition, but you got to go out there and do the work. Sure, interest rates are higher than maybe they've been, but there's still deals that pencil. Sure, there's meetups you could go to. And even though you'd rather stay home and watch Netflix, you really, step into a higher identity that knows that if you go to conferences and meetups and listen to podcasts and read, books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you're going to get what we call the competitive edge to do positive stacking. Because if we align your state and your story with moving forward, that's where we can do a ton of deals and a ton of investing that really allows us to grow to new heights. What do you think of the first 2?
Yep. It does relate to one of the thing that I used to, I had in mind, like, I don't have time, and I can't do this because I don't have time. And after a while, I was like, stop blaming it. go to the bottom of your schedule, like, start your schedule again. See what are the things that are important in your life, what are not, all the tasks. Deprioritize some of the things.
That's
Only
it.
focus on the one that is most important, that can provide 75 to 80% of the value. Focus on that.
I love
and
that.
Get it done.
I love that, Ted. And it's so good that you bring that up, because whenever a client says to me that I don't have time, please write this down, everyone. When you say that, it's really not about time. It's about values. You have a values conflict, or you've got a prioritization problem, right? Because we truly will spend the time on things that we value. And, sometimes we'll talk about our faith, we'll talk about our body, we'll talk about our spouse, we'll talk about our kids, we'll talk about our business, we'll talk about all of that. And different things take different priorities at different times. But for anyone that really looks at what real estate can do, right? Tony's got a great quote where he says, most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they could do in 2 or 3 or 5 years, right? And real estate is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You have to invest the time. And in order to invest the time, you've got to align that as one of your higher values, that you'd rather, go out there and create abundance for yourself and your family than maybe just, succumb to a W-2 job for the rest of your life. Not that there's anything wrong with the W-2, but maybe we could create and carve out some time to work in your W-2 and start investing in real estate part-time.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Ted?
That's how I also started. I had a small business. And then I got a real estate bug and started investing in real estate back in 2012. Wow. And then no looking back.
Yeah. Congrats. Awesome. So that takes us to number 3. So if we got number 1, your state, number 2 is your story, here comes a big one. You know what it is, big guy. And that is your standards. Your standards, right? I can tell the quality of somebody's possibility to grow by the standards they hold themselves to, right? Do you get up early? Do you meditate? Do you move your body? Do you spend time with your family? Do you read books? Do you go to conferences? Do you call brokers and hold yourself accountable to making calls regularly? Or are you learning how to raise capital? Or are you learning how to underwrite? Are you learning how to run the asset? There's lots of different things that we can do. But if you're not checking in with the standards that you're showing up with every day, you're really fooling yourself. So how would you speak to number 3, Ted? What do you think of that?
Absolutely. The thing is, in the standards, right? Whatever you told, like waking up early, meditating, it's a process. You have to follow. You have to be disciplined. You have to, good days or bad days, you have to do those steps wherever, whether you like it or not. But eventually it's going to pay off.
That's right. It's the compounding effect and the stacking effect, right? That if you do some of these things and you get into the right routines, the right habits, the right rituals, it just becomes an extension of, who you are and what you do. It's like having a shower or brushing your teeth, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of going days without doing that. Well, the same thing is true in real estate, in business, and in life. And so that's number 3.
Yep. Great.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So if we've got your state, your story, and your standards, and now the listeners are checking in with all of those and having some ahas there. Wow. That takes us to the final one, number 4, which is your strategy. Right? Your strategy. That is, do you have a recipe or a roadmap or a blueprint or a GPS that's going to help you go from where you are to where you want to be? Right? And that's where books or coaching or, joining a group of like-minded investors can really kind of do what we call turning decades into days. That is, it shouldn't take people 10 years to figure out how to invest in real estate when there's guys like Ted, guys like Trevor, guys like Joe Fairless, one of my clients who literally, that went literally from owning no apartment buildings to today having over $2.7 billion with a B in assets under management in the, 10 years that we've been working together. And Joe is probably one of my most famous clients where, he started out in single family, kind of like I did. And most people listening to this who've invested in real estate have. And then you get to a point where if you want to scale, you start to do bigger deals. You start to raise more capital. You start to surround yourself with the right brokers. And that's really what Joe did. He aligned his state, his story, his standards, and executed on a strategy that took him literally from zero to now 2.7 billion in assets under management. So those four S's, if they can work for me and work for Ted, work for Joe, I swear they'll work for you. Ted, what do you think of that?
Yep. I like the way you put align with the right-minded people. So the network is everything. Yes. The group where you sit, it creates a lot or maybe major impact on what you can become.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And again, you don't want to just check in one time with those four S's. I encourage everybody to write those down on a Post-it note and stick it up in your home office, stick it on your bathroom mirror, put it on the console of your SUV or whatever you're driving, because if you check in with those regularly, you start to show up differently. What do you think?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it. We can talk ever and ever on this one. Let's move on to the next topic.
Sure.
Like we talked about how people can succeed, right? Now let's talk about why some of the real estate investor or some of the people fail to scale,
You bet. Well, again, I'd have to be an idiot at this stage of doing well over 30,000 sessions, being a businessman, an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, a speaker, a coach, a mentor, a trainer, and not see what allows people to achieve phenomenal levels of success, but also see what causes people to fail to scale. And that's where I'm going to share with you and the listener the top 5 things that I see over and over and over again as a high performance coach that cause people to fail. And so we'll go through 1 to 5 here in order. And the first one to kick it off is what we've been talking about all along, which is number 1, and that is limiting beliefs. Right? Limiting beliefs. It's this 3-pound mass between our head called our brain that, kind of gets us off track with, oh my God, I could never do that. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too educated. I'm not educated enough. It's going to take too long. What if I lose my money? What if I lose other people's money? And so these limiting beliefs, as you know, because I know you're big into coaching, are really the number one thing that hold people back from exploding their results. So that's where a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a trainer, somebody can come in and start to take some of those beliefs or some of the wobbles that people have and really get to the brass tacks of the truth that, we can be and do have anything when we clear some of the cobwebs out and put our mind, to what it is we want to create. How would you speak to number 1?
No, absolutely. Mind, you got to have this straightened out first before you take any step. Yeah.
That's it. And that takes us to number 2. And number 2 is what I call a lack of a strategic plan, right? A lack of a strategic plan. Most people spend more time planning their vacation in Mexico every year or the Bahamas than they do their business or their life. So what I like to do is start with the end in mind. Where do you want to go, right? And if we get an idea of where you want to go, maybe what asset class you like, maybe what states you want to invest in. Do you want to do it actively? Do you want to do it passively? When we ask a lot of questions, we get an idea of where you want to go. And now we can reverse engineer that to a place where we get crystal clear on what your short-term goals would be. So maybe short-term would be the next 30, 60, 90 days leading up to 1 year. Then we get clear on what your long-term goals are. And for me, Ted, long-term goals are anything from 1 to 5 years. And then anything beyond 5 years is what I call your vision for your business and your life. So when you think about what do you want and why do you want it, and then we reverse engineer the short-term, the long-term, and the vision, that's where we can, start creating the goal-setting process to get you moving in the right direction. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. So it's like a top-down approach, then break it into different segments. Have a plan for 1 year, break it down into monthly goals, break it down into weekly and daily tasks.
That's it. We call that chunking, right? And every time we go out, we create chunks and then go take those on. Again, we start, making tremendous progress. And that takes us to number 3, which is an extension of 2. But number 3 is really what I call a lack of systems for support, right? A lack of systems for support, because we can get rid of your limiting beliefs and we can create a plan, but are you creating systems that are going to support that plan? Like, again, roles and responsibilities. Are you doing it alone or with partners, right? Are you the guy that's going to look for deals? Are you the guy that's going to underwrite the deals, or the gal? Or are you going to raise capital for deals? Or are you going to run the asset, right? There's all these different things and all these different skill sets. And we've got to, identify who's doing what. We've got to grow our pillars of brokers and lenders and insurance agents and general contractors. And, we need to figure out how we're going to leverage technology to do this and all of those things in between. So once we get rid of the limiting beliefs, we create the strategic plan, then it's time to go in and start, building these systems that are going to support us as we take off. What do you think?
System and network. The process, system and network. Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah. And that takes us to number 4, which is simply what I call poor time management. There, I said it. Poor time management. Most people are doing busy work, right? Most people
I used to be victim of that too. I used to be victim of poor time management, but yep.
Most people are, because they are working on everything that they feel is urgent instead of working on what's really important to grow that process, those professional pillars, those relationships, right? And so, that's a big thing that I help people with. And I really get them to see through a different lens when it comes to, productivity, prioritization, all of that stuff. And then once you crack number 4 wide open, you then, move to number 5. And 5 is interesting because, Ted, I break it into 3 parts: 5A, 5B, and 5C. And this is what it looks like, because 5A is really what I call a lack of execution, right? A lack of execution. If you've conditioned your mindset, you've got the plan, you've got systems to support the plan, and you're starting to build your calendar properly, nothing happens until you go out there and take what I call intelligent and inspired action. That's 5A. You got to get after it. 5B is really measuring your progress. How do you know if you're on track, or how do you know if you're off track? What are your benchmarks? What are your KPIs? What are your deadlines? So once we start executing 5A, we move to 5B, and that's figuring out how we're going to measure your progress. And then the final thing, 5C, is really a lack of accountability. A lack of accountability. In fact, we know statistically that if you don't have somebody holding your feet to the fire, making sure you do what you say you're going to do, we know the path of least resistance kicks in, and you find yourself again looking through the fridge for something or watching Netflix. Well, not on my watch, because I hold my clients accountable to doing things daily, to weekly, to monthly, to quarterly, to biannually, and then annually. And again, it's amazing to see what somebody can do over a period of time. So 5A is a lack of execution, a lack of measuring your progress or course correcting, and then again, not having the accountability you need. And those, my friends, are the 5 reasons why people fail to scale in business and in real estate. Ted.
So Coach, let's say for 5C, you said accountability. If someone doesn't have a coach, how would he help hold himself accountable? What's the way without a coach to help them?
It's simple. You've got partners, you've got accountability partners, you've got spouses. Now, I don't recommend your spouse be your accountability partner. I think you need somebody outside of it. And that is where there's meetups, there's entrepreneurial groups, there's, GoBundance, there's all of these different things out there. Whereas if you're not working one-to-one with a coach, there are other people that you can be accountable to be their partner, and they can be accountable to be your partner, whether you're, in the same asset class or doing the same things. I mean, for the committed, there's always a way, but you do need to have some accountability there.
Some accountability. Yeah. Recommendation is always have a coach, but if you don't, just make sure you have someone else outside your family to hold accountable for.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. The reason why we don't have our family keep us accountable is oftentimes, they'll give you their perspective based on what they think you should or shouldn't do. Whereas somebody outside of your family is a little bit more maybe open to understanding who you are, what you want, why you want it, how bad you want it, and then helping you to move the needle. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah. Great, Coach. So many golden nuggets.
Yes.
So, and I think we can, as I said, we can talk on this forever. So maybe
Yep.
keeping the time constraint in mind, let's switch on to the final round of questions. So the first one, you ready, coach?
I am ready, Ted. Let's do this.
All right. Okay. Thanks. So tell about a situation where your strong mindset helped you overcome that situation, and
Yeah.
it turned out to be a great decision.
Well, I think for me, it was really was I gonna, continue to just do real estate in Canada, right? Or was I going to, kind of get over I guess I was a little bit afraid or a little bit fearful of taking my investment dollars and starting to invest in US real estate, right?
Mhm.
Because again, I thought that maybe real estate needed to be close, that I needed to be able to go drive to it, that I could see what the tenants were doing, that I could, understand the economics of when things needed to be fixed. How much would it cost? Who would come and fix it and all that stuff? So I think I had a little bit of a control issue where I had to really, really, Ted, condition my mind to start to believe that I could invest outside of Canada and in states like Texas, like Florida, like the Carolinas,
Yeah.
like Tennessee, Colorado, right? Indiana, because I've got a beautiful, portfolio now that I would have never, ever, ever thought in a million years that I would own real estate that wasn't, in my backyard. And that was a big deal because that really really ramped up and excelled my ability to grow quickly.
All right, sounds great. And yeah, if you're limited to your area, you miss other opportunities, right? So
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of factors that go into it: landlord-friendly states, migration, job growth. I mean, just so many things that we look at. But man, I would not be where I am today if I would have just stayed investing in Vancouver. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. So next question, coach. What is a single piece of advice that you will give to the busy professionals who wanted to start in real estate investing?
Yeah, it's really that you take intelligent and inspired action part-time. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to spend 30 hours a week working on real estate. You want to immerse yourself in the books, in the podcasts, in the meetups, right? At least 3-4 hours a week, and start to get some traction such that you start to see, hear, feel, and know that if you added another hour or 2 or 3 by working an extra 8 to 10 hours a week part-time can really allow them to excel and start to get into the right groups, the right JV opportunities, the right things for them to unleash what they are ultimately setting out to do in real estate. And, that concept came from Tony Robbins. And he got that concept from his mentor, Mr. Jim Rohn. And Jim was a big believer that, we don't need to go whole hog into anything. We need to really, get a strong why and then really commit time and protect that time, but consistently over time. If you think about how those 5, 6, 8 hours a week add up in week 1 and then week 2 and then week 3 and week 4, now you've got almost, 30 to 40 hours part-time, for you to work on your real estate business every month. And then over the months, that compounds exponentially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what is the one book that you will recommend that change, or maybe it was a life altering for you?
There's really 2 books, right? And I love books and I love podcasts and audiobooks and all of that. But the first one is that little purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I think that totally flipped my paradigm, where he really talked about what's really an asset and what's really a liability, right? And an asset is, something that cash flows or puts money in your pocket, whereas a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That whole thing on housing was a complete flip for me. So that's number 1. And number 2, hands down, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I mean, that book, Ted, became my, Bible. I would read it, I'd reread it, I'd listen to the audiobook. I got the CD program, so I'd literally drive around looking for real estate, and I would play those CDs over and over and over. In fact, my kids can recite passages from Think and Grow Rich. It was played that often. But and the beauty about that book is Napoleon Hill says this. He says, throughout this book, the secret to wealth will be revealed over and over and over again, You might find it on the first page. You might find it on the last page or somewhere in the middle. Well, guess what? The secret to the book is on the front cover. So it's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but he says that we have to think to grow rich. And he didn't write the book Do and Grow Rich because the thinking comes before the doing. And you've got to align your belief system that we're all built to go big. You've got to align your belief system that abundance is your birthright. You've got just as much opportunity to go out there and use real estate as a wealth building vehicle as anyone else that's out there doing it. But you got to condition your mind by thinking this stuff, and then go out there and take that intelligent and inspired action. So those are the two books I highly recommend people either read, or if you're not a reader, definitely pick up the audiobook.
Yep. It's a must book to read. Yep, absolutely. Yep. So coming to the last question, Coach, how would Decoding Cashflow listener get in touch with you?
Well, thank you very much. And it's really very simple. You can tell I'm pretty passionate about real estate, passionate about business, passionate about people. So for anyone that want to connect, there's a couple ways to do it. You can easily find me on LinkedIn. It's Trevor McGregor, or probably to find out a little bit more about who I am, what I do, and how I can help them, you can go to my website, which is simply trevormcgregor.com. trevormcgregor.com. You can see the different things that I offer there. And I also have something really unique, Ted, called my private podcast. And my private podcast is available for purchase on my website. And it's an 8-week program that I call Rich Beyond Belief. And it's really 8 weeks of the best of the best of the best coaching tools, mindset, methodologies for people to pick up. Talks about goal setting, goal achievement, time management mastery, how to become a master of influence, and all of that. And the price of that entire 8-week program, it's an audio program that you literally download to your smartphone, is less than a nice steak dinner out with your spouse and a bottle of wine. In fact, it's $197. So anyone that wants to go, check it out, I highly recommend that they put it in their ear when they're at the gym or driving or, tidying up around the house, doing some yard work or something, because it's going to give you 8 of my top processes for you to implement in your life right away. So that's the best way for people to reach me.
Awesome. So thanks a lot, Coach. Thanks for sharing all the valuable insight. And it was great having you on the show. And
well, thank you for the opportunity to come. Yeah, that was absolutely awesome. And before we wrap, I want to leave the listener, 2 things. Number one is check in with your hunger. I mean, how hungry are you for success in real estate or in business or in life? Because I don't want you to settle for an appetizer when you can go out there and have a beautiful meal. And it's available to all of us. And I truly believe, Ted, as you and I have talked before, that real estate is one of the greatest wealth vehicles on the planet. So check in with your hunger for it. And number 2 would be check in with your passion, right? How passionate are you about real estate? How much passion could you inject into it? Even from this conversation, to align your state, your story, your standards, and your strategies, and then make sure that you're tackling those 5 key reasons that hold people back or fail to scale, and literally start to see through a new lens. Because I'll tell you this, my clients that are hungry and my clients that infuse more passion into this are the ones that go out there and have massive success in real estate. And it's available to everyone.
Thanks a lot, Coach. Thanks for all the valuable insight that you shared with my listeners. And I hope the listeners will take some action and, and be successful. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Ted, and have an amazing day.
You too. Thanks a lot, Coach.
Decoding Cashflow, brought to you by Aster Capital. If you found value in this episode, then please share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And make sure to act on what you've learned. If you want Ted Patel to personally help you reach your goals, then feel free to set up a one-on-one call with him. Also, visit us at astercapital.com for more free resources. Content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. As always, please consult your own advisor before making any investment decisions or setting a course of action. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Decoding Cashflow, and we'll catch you in the next episode.